They said it was an accident, that my parents died in a tragic car crash, and I should just move on. But now I know the truth, because I found the documents they tried to bury, the lies they built their empire on, and I'm going to tear it all down. If you've ever wanted to see someone expose the powerful, bring corrupt family members to their knees, and turn betrayal into victory, this is your story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle in for one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear all year. I used to think my life was just off. Not broken, not cursed. Just wrong in a quiet, unshakable way. Like a jigsaw puzzle with one crucial corner missing. Just enough to ruin the picture, but not enough for anyone else to notice. My name is Axel. I grew up in a small coastal town, raised by a woman named Aunt Miriam. She wasn't my aunt by blood, just someone who took me in after my parents died. That's how she phrased it every time I asked, took you in like a stray dog who happened to wander too close. I was told my parents died in a car crash when I was 6. I don't remember the crash, but I do remember the sound of glass breaking in the middle of the night. I remember someone screaming my name. I remember fire, not from the crash, but in my chest, like something had been torn out of me, and I hadn't even realized it yet. Miriam was cold, meticulous, and controlling. She gave me food, shelter, and a roof. But no warmth, no explanations. I wasn't allowed to ask questions about my parents. Anytime I pushed, her eyes would harden, and she'd say something like, "They're gone. Let the dead lie in peace." But the dead never stayed quiet. Not in my head, not in my dreams. And certainly not when I turned 23 and everything I thought I knew started unraveling. It came in a plain, wax-sealed envelope, delivered not by post, but by a man in a black suit who refused to give his name. From a mutual friend, he said, handing it over before vanishing into the morning fog. Inside was a single sheet of parchment and a brass key. The letter read, "Axel Blackwood, you are the last surviving heir. The truth has been kept from you long enough. The legacy is yours to uncover if you dare to claim it. Locker 217B, Barrington Storage, New York." I stared at the key in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have been, almost like it carried a weight older than me. Blackwood. The name stung my eyes like sunlight after too long in the dark. I'd never heard it spoken aloud. Not since I was a child. 2 days later, I was on a train to New York, the key burning in my pocket. The storage unit smelled like dust, oil, and old paper. Inside were 2 steel trunks, a stack of legal documents, and a single framed photo, a man and woman holding a laughing child in front of a mansion. I froze. I knew that face. I was that child. The documents were stamped with the name Blackwood Holdings and bore an emblem I'd never seen before, an Ouroboros wrapped around a crown. But what chilled me most was the will. If anything should happen to us, our son Axel Blackwood shall inherit full control of the Blackwood estate upon his 25th birthday. Executor, Victor Blackwood. Victor, my father's brother, my uncle, a man I didn't even know existed. But the will had been signed years ago. My parents were murdered when I was 6, and somehow I'd ended up in a stranger's care while Victor, the executor of my inheritance, quietly took over everything. Why? And why hide me? That's when I realized this wasn't an accident. This was theft. Victor and his wife Helena were titans of industry. They owned skyscrapers, hedge funds, luxury brands. On paper, they were philanthropists, visionaries. But the deeper I dug, the darker the web became. Helena Blackwood, née Walsh, had once been a defense attorney known for getting brutal criminals off on technicalities. Her specialty? Making the guilty look innocent. I studied her interviews. Her eyes were sharp but soulless. Every smile calculated. Every word a performance. I attended one of their charity galas in disguise, hiding in plain sight. When Helena passed near me, I caught a scent of roses and something else, like blood beneath perfume. She turned, as if sensing me, and her gaze locked onto mine. For a moment, she froze, then smiled, not the smile of a gracious host, but of a predator recognizing prey. Victor Blackwood had inherited the family empire after my father's death. But he hadn't just inherited it. He'd consolidated, expanded, and erased every trace of opposition, including me. He was calm, immaculately dressed, charming to the public. But there were cracks beneath the mask. His former CFO disappeared in 2015. A journalist investigating Blackwood Holdings died in a supposed gas explosion. Even his own daughter, Isabel, had gone missing at 19 and was never seen again. I hacked into archived legal files, found sealed settlements, hidden accounts, and finally emails. The boy must remain dead. Make sure Miriam keeps her mouth shut. If the will resurfaces, we bury it again. Permanently. That was the moment I stopped feeling like a lost heir and started preparing to be a reckoner. I knew I couldn't take down Victor and Helena alone. Their reach stretched beyond corporate power. They had judges, politicians, even law enforcement in their pocket. If I was going to win this war, I needed help. But not just any help. I needed ghosts. People they couldn't see coming. That's when I remembered Isabel, Victor's daughter, my cousin. She had vanished without a trace at 19, and the media chalked it up to a rebellious phase or a mental breakdown. But I knew better. The Blackwoods didn't allow mistakes. They erased them. I traced her last known location to a halfway house in Boston. Not a luxury resort, not a rehab center, but a rundown women's shelter under a fake name. It took me weeks to earn their trust, but eventually, a gaunt woman with sunken eyes and dark circles said quietly, "You're not the first Blackwood to come looking for her, but you're the first who's come without a threat." Her name was Noelle. She worked security for Victor for years. She'd left after witnessing an accident that wasn't an accident at all. Victor's former partner mysteriously fell from a penthouse window. Noelle saw Helena in the building that night. The security footage vanished. She agreed to help me. Quietly. Strategically. She even found Isabel. She was alive. Living under a new name. Off-grid. Terrified. When I found her, she looked like a ghost. Hollowed out. Hair cropped short. Twitchy. But when I said, "I'm Axel, your cousin," something inside her shifted. She cried for the first time in 10 years. And then she said the words I never expected. "I have everything. Documents. Audio. I was going to run forever, but maybe it's time I helped burn it all down." Isabel had been keeping a vault, literally and metaphorically. When Victor and Helena suspected she was a liability, they made her sign NDAs and try to have her committed. She escaped, but not before copying hundreds of files from Victor's personal hard drives. Banking records, wire transfers to shell companies. A recording of Helena threatening an old family lawyer who refused to alter the will. We made sure the kid's out of the picture. You want to join him? That lawyer, Elias Monroe, had supposedly retired to Argentina. But Noelle found him. He was alive and very willing to talk when I showed up with the right leverage. "You were a bright boy," Elias said, sipping scotch with trembling hands. "Your father, he wanted you to inherit everything. He didn't trust Victor. Neither did your mother. They planned to cut him off. That's why he had to make sure they never got the chance." My heart sank. I asked the question I'd been dreading for years. Did Victor kill them? Elias stared at me with hollow eyes. "No," he said. "Helena did." He explained how Victor staged the crash. But Helena was the one who sabotaged the brakes. She took my mother's life with a smile, and did it with my father watching helplessly from the passenger seat, seconds before impact. The pain was indescribable. It felt like my bones were cracking under the weight of truth. But pain is a useful thing when channeled right. It sharpens the blade. It began with a quiet filing, a legal challenge to the will, a DNA test, and the unsealing of archived files that Victor had buried years ago, all submitted through a law firm that specialized in asset recovery and trust litigation. Victor underestimated me. He thought I was just a kid with a grudge, not a man with proof, witnesses, and a cousin who'd seen behind the curtain. The media got wind of the case, and suddenly the Blackwood name wasn't just on Forbes and Business Weekly. It was all over court TV, Reddit, and the front pages of tabloids. Victor denied everything. Called me a scam artist. Helena held press conferences with crocodile tears. But the cracks began to spread. Then came the leaks. Noel anonymously delivered damning audio recordings to journalists. One was Helena laughing about how easy it was to take out the golden boy and his doe-eyed wife. The court froze Victor's assets. The Blackwood board removed him as acting CEO. And the final blow? Isabel, publicly testifying under oath. She looked directly at her father and said, "You let Mom kill them. You let her take everything, and then you let her break me. But I remember everything, and so will the world." Victor went pale. For the first time, he looked small, pathetic. The judge ruled in my favor. I was declared the sole heir of the Blackwood estate. But it wasn't over. Not until justice was done. Money wasn't justice. A court ruling wasn't justice. Justice was watching their empire fall. Watching the very people who thought they were untouchable be exposed to the world for what they really were, parasites. With Isabel and Noel on my side, we launched a full investigation with a group of independent auditors, ex-intelligence experts, and legal assassins who live for this kind of reckoning. Every dirty deal, every buried secret, every offshore account, publicized, prosecuted, permanently documented. Victor tried to flee to Zurich. Interpol intercepted him mid-flight. Helena went darker. She tried to blackmail a federal judge. Got caught. The image of her being dragged out of her penthouse in cuffs will stay with me forever. She looked at me, eyes wide, mouth curled in rage, and spat the words, "You think you've won?" I smiled. "No, I know I've won. You buried my family. Now I'm burying your legacy." She screamed as they took her away. Victor pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll rot in prison for the next 30 years. Their assets seized. Their empire dismantled. Their reputation annihilated. And me? I stood on the balcony of the Blackwood Tower, now mine, and looked out at the skyline. I wasn't just the heir. I was the reckoner. The mansion where my parents once lived had been sealed off for decades. Overgrown. Forgotten. I walked through it slowly, fingers trailing the walls, memories blooming like ghosts in the dust. Their bedrooms still smelled faintly like lavender and cedar. My mother's perfume. I stood in the middle of the hall and whispered, "It's done. I found the truth." I took it all back. Tears came. Not just grief, but peace. In the following months, I turned Blackwood Holdings into something new. Ethical. Transparent. For every dollar my uncle laundered, I donated two to causes my parents would have believed in: education, justice, restoration. Isabel became head of the foundation. Noel took over security. I wasn't just rebuilding. I was rewriting. The lost heir had come home, not to claim a fortune, but to restore a legacy. And now, every time someone sees the Blackwood name, they won't think of corruption or cruelty. They'll think of survival, of justice, of redemption. Because revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclamation. And I reclaimed everything. If this story gave you chills, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps us out. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if someone stole your family's legacy? Don't forget to subscribe for more real, raw, and deeply satisfying revenge stories every single day.